Hello there, it's Paula Kensington here. I wanted to give you some updates after the last Future Finance Thinkers conversation that happened in August. And I just wanted to really share some of the thinking that I've been working on most recently when it comes to how do we get beyond net zero. And so, as part of the conversation in that Future Finance Thinkers lab, I started to introduce my thinking around how do we think about getting beyond or getting to net zero and getting beyond that. You might call it net positive, or where we start to actually create better impact, regenerative impact, and not just thinking about how do I reduce my impact, but actually how do I then have a positive impact. And if we think about it like a pyramid, and trying to sort of land this with the finance and business community to get your insights, to get your reflections on this. So I spent some of the time in that conversation thinking about, if we're in this pyramid, then at the bottom of the pyramid, what's driving companies to get to net zero and potentially beyond it? It's compliance led, and I think that's where the bulk of businesses and organizations are, because obviously with mandated reporting, we're now driven from a regulation perspective to be compliant. So it comes as no surprise, I guess, that that bottom part of the pyramid is really about compliance led. And then as companies progress beyond compliance, they start to realize that actually this could be an optimization play. And I'm not just going to be compliant because of regulation, but actually I can optimize my business, find efficiencies, start to pivot, start to maneuver my business models to actually become more optimized. Then you start to get into, well, actually, maybe looking at compliance, looking at sustainability in a strategic way actually sets me apart from my competitors and actually becomes a driving force for new opportunities, new markets, new consumers finding us, because we're actually looking at this from a strategic perspective and not just a compliant perspective. So that taking a longer term view. And then at the top of the pyramid, we've got the likes of I can't think of their name now, but Patagonia, around being purpose-led businesses. So, how many businesses in the world are there that actually are really about the purpose and really around regeneration and, absolutely in service to others. And so there's less of those at the top of the pyramid. But we're starting to build this model now that says, well, what is the measure? How do we start measuring these different stages, but actually the driving energy within an organization to take action, decision making, resource allocation? How do I think about the action that I take? And so the R's in the triangle around, how do I test to see whether I'm compliance led? And I think that really is talking about risk being at the center of everything we do, thinking about return, but also thinking about building resilience. And so that is the energies behind where organizations are becoming just compliance led. And then I think on top of that, where organizations are reimagining business models, reimagining what their life cycle is for their product or their service, and actually thinking about how do I reduce the impact, how do I reduce my consumption, or how do I reimagine, and that starts to lead to those efficiencies and then optimization. And then we get into the strategic piece, which is actually about revaluing and readdressing and reviewing and respecting the communities in which I'm operating in, respecting different parts of the whole system and revaluing as well. And then at the top around how to be regenerative. So I'm working on this and starting to think about the nodes or system, which I think I've shared with you before, around how do we think about finance, how do we think about governance, how do we think about knowledge, people, decision making, communication, trust. There's 8 nodes in this whole organizational system, and then these R's are kind of almost like the sort of the layer underneath the nodes are almost like a pathway between how do all of these different nodes operate within my business. Anyway, so that was part of August conversation. And some of the reflections back from the people that came to that conversation was that, we don't want to overwhelm business. Businesses have got a lot to report on already with climate reporting, climate accounting. We don't want a whole new set of questions to get. What is the value? Basically, I was being challenged. What's the value of all of these questions that we're posing in these different categories, and how is it going to impact the business so that they don't have to keep jumping through more hoops and more hoops? But then on the flip side of that reflection was also, if big businesses aren't ready for reporting, compliance, and thinking beyond just compliance led, then where have they been in the last 9 years? Because Paris agreements came out in 2015. If you're a large business, then this is firmly on your radar over the last 9 years, and so there's no excuses, was one of the participants' reflections. There's no excuses for businesses, for CFOs, for directors and boards not to be ready. And just today, I was reflecting on the words from the ASIC chair that the boards actually have to drive better behaviours. And now with the Australian mandated reporting now past the Senate, it's about how are you thinking to actually meet the reporting requirements. And his response was, this is the biggest change in regulatory history reporting in a generation. So that is a huge impact and opportunity, to do better. So that's where we left things in August. The next conversation is happening in October, the 22nd. If you haven't already registered, please click below in this newsletter to register. And I look forward to having your voice there.